The latest Northern Bank Sectoral Forecast report shows that growth in the local economy will remain relatively weak. About 1% is what we estimate for this year and 1.8% for 2011. I think it's probably quite important as well to say while the overall growth is relatively weak, there are some sectors that are doing quite well, but unfortunately that growth is quite unevenly balanced throughout the economy, with some sectors growing and some sectors remaining weak. We've seen some quite high growth in three sectors in particular. Two of those sectors coming in at growth levels of over 3%. Retailing, hospitality, both growth levels of over 3%, which is really quite remarkable. And manufacturing has had good growth, 2.5% is our forecast for the whole of 2010. Retail, some surprising figures really, I suppose, in light of how maybe consumers are feeling at the moment. But certainly we can see a shift there, discount stores holding up well, and of course people still always buy food. We certainly hope to be able to tap into the ROI customers coming up to Christmas in the Q4 period. Again, that will depend on the sterling exchange rate, but at the moment it is looking quite hopeful for that sector. Next year, however, big challenges ahead for retail in terms of the rise in VAT, etc. Hospitality, again, quite good figures there, particularly for stay vacations, I think is probably maybe what is driving that growth. And again, that is one of those sectors that will benefit from the seasonal impact of Q4. As I say, the run up to Christmas will help it. With regards to manufacturing, we have seen some very good growth in terms of employment levels in manufacturing, particularly in Q2. This year we have seen increases of 700 extra jobs there. And again, we haven't seen those levels of growth since 2005. So some local manufacturers tapping into the global recovery and making the most of that in terms of their exports and doing well out of it. So I suppose we do have to caveat that the growth that we have in the local economy is very unevenly balanced. We have had that good growth in some sectors, but there are other sectors that are still struggling. Quite disappointing performance for business services in our view, that growth of 1.4% in 2010. Although that is a sector that we are quite bullish on in the future and think should do well, and it is one to watch. Obviously other sectors such as construction, retail, anything related to housing is still pretty glum there, and construction itself due to contract by about 3% this year. So overall, in summary, weak growth going forward, 1% growth this year, about 1.8% next year. Higher chances that we'll just bump along the bottom with weak growth. The chances of falling back into recession remain at 1 in 5, 20%, so quite reasonably low. Big challenge for Northern Ireland is to grow the private sector, and that's the only way we'll get out of this low growth scenario.